Hi everybody, I hope that you are all safe and may God bless you all. This is another lecture where we're going to see phonological processes. By phonological processes I mean those changes that sounds undergo in different phonetic environments. And the first process we're going to see is assimilation. The definition of this process is as follows. It's the process whereby one sound changes to become more like another sound in its environment. It means assimilation. It may involve the realization of a phoneme by one allophone rather than another. For example, n is realized as a dental when it occurs before another dental sound, as in tenth. Remember that the place of articulation of n is alveolar, and here it has another secondary articulation that we call dentalization. The n is dentalized. Okay, notice the diacritic below it here. This is the diacritic which shows that it is dentalized. Now, how does this happen? Normally, the n, which is a pure alveolar sound, is followed by an interdental sound, th. And this fact, influences the pronunciation of the alveolar sound, which is n. It makes of it a dentalized sound. Other examples of assimilation, we can talk about L. We know, as we said before, L can be pronounced in different ways in English. And one of these different ways, or what we call pronunciations or realizations, is the liberalized L. Okay? So L is realized with liberalization when it occurs next to a rounded vowel. For example, in lose and fool, transcribed phonetically as lose and fool here. Notice the diacritic below the L in here and this diacritic below L here. Okay, this diacritic shows that the L is being labialized. How does this happen? Of course, because L is found next to a rounded vowel. You remember from what we saw in phonetics, U is a rounded vowel. Therefore, it's going to affect in one way or another the L, either before it or following it, and it will make of it a labialized sound. Another example, a vowel may be realized as voiceless when it occurs between two voiceless sounds in an unstressed syllable. Remember that all vowels are by nature voiced. For example, in the word potato, the first vowel is a schwa and placed between two voiceless sounds, p and t. Therefore, it will be devoiced, potato. So notice this vowel here, this schwa, and the small circle below it, it shows that it is devoiced. Normally, its nature is that it is voiced. But in this particular context, since it is surrounded by p and t, which are voiceless, it will be devoiced. Okay, so notice the small circle as a diacritic below schwa to show its devoicing. Now, assimilation may involve the replacement of one phoneme by another when a word appears in certain environments. For example, we can say 10 eggs. Look at the N of 10. It's a pure alveolar sound. But 10 in this phrase, 10 minutes, normally it's not pronounced as 10, it's 10 minutes. Same thing in here, 10. Here in this phrase, 10 keys, it becomes 10 keys. Okay, so in both examples here, the N is changed, okay, is replaced by M and here by N. Why does this happen? Of course, because here the following sound is a bilabial sound, M. Therefore, it will impose the feature of bilabial on the preceding sound, which is n. It's not going to be an alveolar sound, it's going to be a bilabial one due to the influence of the bilabial sound following it. Same thing in here. The N here, which is alveolar, will be changed into a velar sound, which is nasal, because this is due to the influence of the velar stop. We don't follow in it here. Now, I have in the word I have v is a voiced sound. Of course, we know it's fricative and it's labiodental. But in the phrase I have to, this v here, tends to be changed into or replaced by f, a voiceless one. Because this sound is followed by a voiceless stop, which is t here. So here, we talk about some sounds, trying to be more similar to the next sound in the same phonetic environment here. Now, same thing here. You did. Look at the last sound of did. It's a pure alveolar sound, a voice stop. But when we if you like, make of this phrase a kind of question, it becomes did you? It's not did you, but did you? Notice, ye is no longer there. It becomes j. So it becomes it moves forward towards the place of articulation of the, which is alveolar. So it becomes what we call a palato-alveolar sound or an alveopalatal sound here. So in assimilation, sounds tend to become more like each other because they are found in the same phonetic environment. Now, assimilation is of two different kinds. It may be progressive, when a sound changes to become more like a preceding sound. Here, did you. This, due to the influence of the on here, it becomes j, did you. Now, the other kind of assimilation is regressive or anticipatory, assimilation. It happens when one sound changes to become more like a following sound. For example, have to, it becomes have to. So here it's the following sound, the second sound, that affects or influences the sound preceding it. This is a case of regressive assimilation. Now, another process is the opposite of assimilation. It's the one that we call dissimilation. It's the process whereby one sound changes to become more unlike, that is different from, a sound in its environment. For example, a voiceless bilabial or velar stop may be replaced by a glottal stop when the following sound is also a bilabial or velar. Let's have a look at a concrete example. Look, soap, powder. We have got a bilabial stop followed by a voiceless bilabial stop. Same thing in here. So normally a sequence of two voiceless stops is, especially when they are homorganic stops, it's a heavy sequence. It's not natural. It's not easy. So to make this sequence easier and more natural, it's better to change the first stop into a glottal stop here. So it's easier to say soap powder instead of soap powder. It's heavier. So this dissimilation process here is done for some practical purposes. Now, dissimilation may also be progressive or regressive. For example, back garden. Normally, here, back garden here, one is changed into a glottal stop. Instead of saying back garden, you say back garden. And it's going to be, here, easier and more natural here. That target, it's easier. Now, a great number of phonological processes can be explained through secondary articulations. Therefore, we will present some of the secondary articulations that will help us understand these processes and the formulation of the phonological rules embodying them. Of course, by secondary articulation, it's meant that the basic speech sounds may be modified in various ways. These modifications, which are imposed on the primary articulation of a sound, are called secondary articulations. For example, aspiration. Aspiration of voiceless stops is one of them. Of course, we know that the sounds of English which get aspirated are the voiceless stops. We have got p, t, k, especially when they are initial, that is at the beginning of words. So, in fact, here, aspiration is something which accompanies the pronunciation of p, which is a stop. So the stop is not just a pure stop, it's an aspirated stop. So aspiration is another kind of, if you like, secondary articulation. Now let's talk about other secondary articulations. We can talk about labialization. In the word labialization, we have got the word labial, which means, the lip is involved, or the lips, both lips are involved in the pronunciation of a certain sound. Now, this involves lip rounding and a high back tongue position. Labializing a consonant causes it to take on a W-like quality, or U quality, if you like. The words quench, quick, and quart all begin with K's, which are labialized. Labialization is represented by a superscript, U, this W here. In our examples, the first sound will be transcribed phonetically as kua, kua. So here it's both labialized and aspirated. In the three words, quench, quick, quart, in the three cases, the k is both labialized and aspirated. It's both labialized and aspirated here. Now, note, the adjectives labialized and labial must be kept distinct. The stop is labial but not labialized. But in the word pueblo, it's aspirated and labialized. Look at this transcription here once again. Now, another case of secondary articulation is the one that we call palatalization. Here, consonants may also be modified by extending the body of the tongue into the high front position. This produces a E-like modification called palatalization. Examples. The initial sounds of few, hew, and mule are all produced in this manner. Compare these sounds with the initial sounds of full, hot, cool, and moon, all of which are made without palatalization. Of course, as mentioned before, a raised Y directly after a symbol indicates palatalization. The palatalized consonants in our examples will be represented as fe, he, me. So, fuel, hew, mule. Why do we have this Y symbol? Because it symbolizes the sound E normally. And of course we know that E is a palatal sound. When this palatal sound influences the consonant or the sound before it, okay, this is said to be a case of palatalization. Now, another case of secondary articulation is valorization. Notice in the word valorization, we have got the word vela. You need to remember what we said, in phonetics about the word vela. Vela, or its synonym, that is, it denotes that place in the roof of the mouth that we call the soft palate. Okay? Now, let's talk about the definition of valorization here. It is achieved by raising the back of the tongue towards the velum during articulation. Example. In English, let's go back to the example of L as a sound in English. The L sound is pronounced in different ways according to the environment where it is found. In leap and late, it's clear. We say la, a pure alveolar lateral. But in people, the L in people, it's dark. Notice all, not la. It is modified in the way specified in the definition here. Velarized sounds are represented by adding the diacritic here, this diacritic, or a slash mark to the symbol for the sound in question. Thus, this is L or this is L. Both of them indicate a velarized L. Now, pharyngealization is also another kind of secondary articulation. Here, consonant sounds may be modified by constricting the pharynx during articulation. This secondary articulation is called pharyngealization. Now, when a secondary pharyngeal constriction is superimposed upon a consonant articulation, the diacritic symbol, this one, is used. This is the same diacritic used to denote velarization. It is possible to use the same diacritic for these two secondary articulations because velarized and pharyngealized sounds are very similar and do not seem to be differentiated in any language. Some put a dot below pharyngealized sounds, this one. So this one is all represents a pharyngealized L. Having done now with different kinds of secondary articulations, now let's go back to the phonological processes we started, at the very beginning of this lecture here. You still remember that we talked about assimilation as a first process, followed by dissimilation as a second one. Now, the third process is the one that we call a lesion. This is the process whereby one or more segments are omitted in certain contexts. The elided segment may be a consonant, for example, last night. What you obtain normally in rapid colloquial speech is not last night, but last night. Okay? Or we can omit a vowel. For example, in police, the vowel after p is omitted here. Normally, there is a general tendency to pronounce it as police, or a sequence of both. Look, the word library, in the way it is written, but the way it is normally pronounced, it's library. So we have omitted a sequence of consonant plus vowel. Now, I would like you to consider the pronunciation of these words here. Is it kno or no? Is it knife? Is it whistle? Okay? So try to consider the pronunciation of these words. Now, another process is metathesis. It's the process whereby the relative order of two segments gets reversed, as in slips of the tongue, like wops for wasp or aminal for animal here. Now, here we are just, swapping one sound for the other. We are just changing the order of sounds. Now, of course, it has got some kind of significance sometimes in some social contexts. And this is the case of Moroccan Arabic words like zam'akin for za'makin, or a'mak for ma'ak. So try to consider what they suggest, okay, what they signify in the Moroccan context here. Two more processes, the ones that we call apocope and syncope. So the outright loss of segments, particularly in unstressed syllables, is also a common process. Different names are given to this process depending on where in the word it occurs. Number one, or the first case, apocope is the loss of a segment or segments at the end of a word. Look at the end of a word here. The loss of final R in British English and American English is in parts of the East is an example of apocope. Look, the word starring, there is the R here which is present, but in the word star alone, we tend to omit that R, star. So it's a case of apocope. The other case which is related to it but slightly different is syncope. This is the loss of a segment or segments from some part of the word rather than the end. It's other than the end. Other than the end. This is the difference. The first one happens, at the end. Here, it happens somewhere else apart from the end. Now, compare English words such as, look, is it apostle or apostle? Here, we have to make it different from apostolic. When we derive the adjective out of this word, out of this noun here, we tend to, if you like, to insert the t which is omitted in our pronunciation in apostle. It becomes apostolic. Same thing in here. We have got a certain vowel between j and l which is missing. We say angel. But in fact, this vowel which is weakened, it is made a strong vowel. It becomes angelic. It becomes a, j, angelic here. Now, apocope and syncope often serve to reduce the length of clusters. For example, in most English dialects, the STS, the sequence of sound, or cluster, created by suffixing the plural to words such as post, test, is reduced to just s. Instead of saying posts, tests, it's easier to say tests. It becomes just a sequence of two s's here in rapid speech. Now, in a number of dialects, final pt or pt and kt here, okay, clusters are simplified by dropping the t. So instead of saying slapped, it's easier to say slap. Fact, fact. And we understand that it's fact here. Now, prothesis and epenthesis. There is an A missing in here. Let's add it. Prothesis and epenthesis. Okay, another way of simplifying clusters is to insert a vowel between adjacent consonants or to add a vowel at the beginning or end of a word so as to create an extra syllable. The process which adds a vowel in initial position is called prothesis. That which adds a vowel or consonant in any other position is known as epenthesis. Remember once again, as we said about apocope and syncope. In apocope, it's the end which is involved. In the syncope, it's the other parts, the other positions. Same thing in here. Here, when we talk about the initial position, it's prothesis. When we talk about the other parts, it's epenthesis. Now, let's talk about the examples. In Spanish, Spanish has a prothesis rule that adds a to prevent the occurrence of word initial sp, st, and sk clusters. Thus, we have, for example, español. Look, in English, we say Spanish. It's easy to begin words by s, Spanish. In Spanish, Spanish, speakers, don't begin words by s. They tend to put a vowel before it. This is the a, which is put before it here. Español. Look, establir, escuela. Okay, so here we have got school. Look, notice school, but here it becomes escuela. Now, English has an epenthesis rule that inserts schwa between a stem final t or d and the d for the past tense or past participle ending. Added and rested. So instead of saying added, we say added and rested here. Now, some epenthesis rules insert a consonant rather than a vowel. For example, the p of assumption, redemption, and warmth here. This is, the consonant which is inserted here. To see this clearly, try to compare these forms with assume, redeem, and warm. Though the inserted consonant seems to lengthen the cluster, it does not make it less natural. Okay, and thank you. I hope we are going to have another occasion to interact with each other and to see further notions in phonology and later on, in morphology.